Okay, does everyone see discussion of Grounded in the Stars?
Yes.
Okay, so I first became aware of Grounded in the Stars sculpture and installation in Times Square, the way I become aware of a lot of things in popular culture because, I'm an old guy, I'm a little bit out of it. I became aware of this because one of my friends was complaining about it. She wasn't complaining about the sculpture. She was complaining about all the right-wing memes about the sculpture. They were really upsetting her. And I was like, what's all this about? People are arguing about a sculpture? And I was like, wow, people are actually arguing about art. That in itself, like, is a reason, in my opinion, to pop open a bottle of champagne. People in America are arguing about art. So I thought, okay, this is really interesting. I've got to go up and see this thing that all these people are arguing about. Um, and I figured the right time to see a sculpture in Times Square is, not, on Monday afternoon, but on Friday night. So we went up to Times Square on Friday night and had a look. So here it is, this big sculpture of a confident black woman standing in the middle of the street. And all of these women in color, one after the other, were running up to this sculpture and having their friends take their picture next to this sculpture. I mean, it was constant. And sometimes it was guys. And occasionally it was even a white person. People really wanted to have their picture taken next to this sculpture. Now, there were two other giant-sized monumental sculptures on Times Square. They're both of famous white men. Um, and I didn't see anyone trying to get their picture taken. And there are probably a lot of reasons for that. One might be all the publicity around the Grounded in the Stars sculpture. One might be the fact that it's a black woman and not a white man. But another one might be like, look at these sculptures. They're up on these pedestals and they're separated from people. Like, you're not supposed to get close to them, right? You're supposed to look at them at a great distance, whereas this sculpture, even though she's a giant, she's walking on the same ground you're walking on. She's right there with you. So I thought that was pretty interesting decision that the artist had made. Another thing that happened is right at midnight, like right at like it's actually if you need to go out there and see it, it actually happens at 11:57. At 11:57, all of the signs in Times Square turn into the face of a black man. And that lasts for about a minute. And to get what that minute is like, So a lot of people have speculated that this face, this head, and there actually seem to be several different heads. Um, a lot of people have speculated that this might have been produced with artificial intelligence. The artist says that there's actually sculpted from plasticine and then the eyes are animated. So the eyes are blinking at you. Um, I'm not in the artist studio. I don't know how he really did it. Um, but either way, it's pretty damn effective, I thought. At least I felt it was. Um, so the artist's name is TJ Price, and he specializes in doing these monumental figures of black people in pretty much everyday clothes, standing at ease and doing pretty much everyday things. And he's British, and his family comes from the Caribbean. His parents were immigrants, and in fact, one of his first commissions was a sculpture that commemorated the generation that immigrated to Britain from the Caribbean. And he's got sculptures all over Europe that are all these kind of giant-sized sculptures of black people doing very ordinary things and wearing very ordinary clothes. There seem to be a lot of them where people are checking their cell phone, which I guess if you look out at a crowd of people nowadays, half the people are checking their cell phone. And apparently, the artist had a sculpture put up in Florence. In front of a reproduction of the David. Of course, the David was originally displayed in a public square in Florence, and now I believe it's indoors, so that there's a reproduction in public square. So the artist put a temporary installation there with the David, so kind of inviting a comparison between the relaxed pose of his work and the relaxed pose of Michelangelo's David. So, seeing as the David is being invoked here, maybe we should talk about the David a little bit. The David was a sculpture made for the city of Florence um, by Michelangelo. And at the time of Michelangelo's life, at the time when he was living in Florence, Florence was in rebellion against Rome. Florence was setting up a type of democracy. We probably wouldn't call it democracy now, but something a little more democratic than, being run by the Pope, who was, of course, a monarch. Um, and so Florence was in rebellion, and Michelangelo actually took part in that rebellion. And in fact, um, he apparently built barricades for the defense of Florence, and when Florence was defeated, he had to go into hiding. Uh, People have now found a set of tombs in which he hid for a period of time because the authorities were looking for him, and they know he was there because he did sketches on the inside of this tomb. And then when he was apprehended, they were going to execute him, but they agreed to let him live if he would finish the Sistine Chapel. So those are the advantages of being an artist, I guess. Um, but anyways, so the David is a symbol of a city in rebellion. And to me, he always looked like a young man who was getting ready to throw a rock at a cop, which is sort of what he was, or a Palestinian getting to throw a rock at an occupier. Um, so, the David is a lot of things. There's also who Michelangelo was sexually, that, for many years, people have speculated that Michelangelo had to be gay because he drew the male anatomy so well and the female anatomy so poorly. Um, and now some art historians have found letters between Michelangelo and a male model who modeled for a lot of the paintings, and they do seem to be amorous letters. So yeah, Michelangelo was probably homosexual. I probably shouldn't say gay because gay is a contemporary state, right? It's a whole lot of things, but Michelangelo was attracted to men. Um, Along with that, Michelangelo also did a series of sculptures of slaves. This is one of them, I believe. Each slave is in a different state. This one is the rebellious slave. You can see he's tied, his hands are tied behind his back, but he's kind of looking up and, you know, looking a little rebellious. And of course, you know, most art history classes won't mention this, but the Italian Renaissance and the beginnings of the international trade are about the same time in history, pretty close. And of course, the slave trade is started by the Spanish and the Portuguese, who are Catholic countries, who certainly would have been in touch with people in Rome. So it's fair to say that Michelangelo knew that Europeans were taking slaves, and he did a bunch of sculptures of slaves, whatever you want to say that means. So there are a number of reasons that T.J. Price might be influenced by Michelangelo, but I think a bigger influence might be Francisco Goya, who did these paintings of ordinary working class people, but looking very confident and very exalted, you know, washerwomen, blacksmiths. And I know you'll see that there are some comments about the clothes that grounded in the stars woman is wearing. And I should point out that it was kind of conventional in 18th and 19th century European painting, such as these paintings by Goya, to show the working class as powerful and exalted, but also wearing very ragged clothes. Um, and of course, that makes sense because in the 19th century, clothes were pretty expensive, and poor people very often couldn't get very good clothes and had maybe one suit of good clothes and the rest of it was kind of torn up. Um, so that was a reason to do that. And so it's conventional in European depictions of the working class. Um, Also, as far as the sculpture being a giant, it's also a really conventional device in art celebrating labor to show the working person as a giant. Okay, so all of this is stuff that people have done. All of this is stuff that's part of a tradition. Um, so what about this whole business of showing the art in Times Square? Well, in the 1980s, Jenny Holzer did this whole series of billboards in Times Square with political statements in them. And after that, I believe also Political Art Documentation and Distribution also did a similar set of displays. So this idea that the radical thing to do was to take art into a public space like Times Square where ordinary people would see it is not a new idea either. So all of this to me shows that grounded in the stars is actually grounded in the history of representational art. There's nothing new or outrageous or woke or that experimental about this work. It's very solid, well done, conventional work. Um, so it's very interesting what people on the right want to say about this sculpture. And I'm now going to show you their memes, and I have to give you a trigger warning because some of them are very upsetting, but I think it's important that we see what they're saying. So I'm going to show those, and if somebody can't handle that, please feel free to look away. I'm going to start out with the easy ones, but they get worse. So this is really interesting. Western civilization then and now. So you kind of wonder what this person thinks Western civilization actually is, right? Because it's like, well, then, we were making sculptures of, you know, skinny white women who were showing their breasts, and now we're making sculptures of healthy black women who are confident and fully dressed. So I guess civilization has gone downhill because we don't get to look at skinny white girls' breasts. I don't know. This is a very strange idea about civilization this person has. You really got to wonder. Um, so here's another one. Apparently, you know, statues were great when they were naked white men, but clothed back women just don't cut it. I don't know. So this is again, gee, it tells you a lot more about the person who made this meme than it does about the sculpture, really, right? Um, but they get weirder. So I don't know if this person is like putting down Attorney General Letitia James by comparing her to the statue, or putting down the statue by comparing it to Letitia James, because apparently this person doesn't like either of them. But I actually think, considering the popularity of this statue, maybe Letitia James will want to use this meme as her campaign poster, you know? Um, but apparently, comparing the statue to a politician you don't like is something that right-wing people wanted to do. Um, and now it gets a little worse. So now we really know. Now we really know what this person thinks, that this person looks at an ordinary black woman doing nothing particularly illegal in her street clothes, and he imagines her being thrown in prison. So I think the person who produced this meme is telling us a lot about himself. And it gets worse. So again, we had a sculpture of a fully clothed black woman who's not doing anything all that strange. And Hunter Eagleman sees that and he immediately imagines this weird sexual fantasy he seems to have about a very large black woman in this very revealing outfit flipping the bird. Pretty damn weird, Hunter Eagleman, right? And then it gets really bad that apparently, when this person looks at a black woman, fully dressed, confident black woman, he imagines her as a screaming homeless woman pushing a shopping cart up the street. So this is all pretty horrible. And I understand why my friend was really freaked out by seeing some of this stuff. Um, what I find really interesting is that modern technology, Keynote, PowerPoint, Photoshop, and now artificial intelligence has empowered all of these people who probably knew nothing about art, nothing about the history of art, and didn't know how to draw to make pictures and show us the way the world looks through their eyes. Okay? That is what AI has allowed these people to do. And while all of these other images were in one way digitally manufactured, this picture is completely real. This sign is there on 42nd Street. The era of AI employees is here. Stop hiring humans. So, Donald Trump came to power saying he was going to keep us from being replaced. Okay, but here is the replacement right here, the replacement for human employees, and it's being said publicly. Okay, So, very interesting moment and very interesting things coming out of the right and the way they're using technology. Um, but I wouldn't want to say that the only people criticizing the sculpture are on the right. I mean, let's face it, those of us in the American left know we are the world's champions when it comes to critique. We can critique anything, particularly each other. Okay, so when I put this stuff up on my Facebook page, I got mostly people saying, wow, it looks beautiful, but I got a few people critiquing it. So I thought I would share some of that. I find it interesting that these large, oversized statues are all women and that all the artists are men. It feels, in a way, weaponizing the female body, and it is very unsettling to me. It may be a nice statue. I have not had an opportunity to see it in person, but from the photos, I can tell you this. Most modern American women would be embarrassed to let all those passing New York City cab drivers see them in their underwear. And I responded, she's not in her underwear. And he said, hell, she ain't. Her panties are showing. So I don't know. I guess this guy can look at the photo and see her panties. I don't know. Um, Here's another one. Sage is black. She's a fire performer who lived at C Squat for a bit. We both want to love this sculpture, but wish that the artist had depicted someone who was prouder of her appearance. Both Sage and I think that no black woman, especially a big black woman, would want to be seen in jeans and an untucked t-shirt. If you're a person of color, one of the only ways to assert your presence and navigate the world is through curating your appearance. Such mixed feelings because otherwise the statue is amazing. And here's another one. I mean, sometimes I agree. I like the statue personally, and there's nothing wrong with representation. I just wish the statue drew more attention as art rather than as a focal point for racist and anti-racist people to yell back and forth at each other when they have no actual interest in the sculpture. And another critique that I heard recently was, well, the other sculptures in Times Square are of famous people, and this is a sculpture of an unknown and unnamed fictional black woman, and that's an unfair comparison to make. I suppose one could also say the other sculptures have pedestals to stand on, whereas she is down on the street, and people may feel there's something negative in that too. Um, but what I get from all of this, what I felt after looking at this sculpture up on Times Square is I felt like, wow, we are living through a really amazing moment in history. We have a real right in this country and we have a real left. And both the right and the left are expressing themselves. They are using art, they are using technology, and people are listening to them. People are interested. There were all of those people getting their pictures taken in front of the statue, and there are all of those people posting those right-wing memes. Nobody is acting like this is just some silly thing that doesn't matter. It matters to them a lot what that sculpture looks like. And I think that this is a great moment to be an artist, a great moment to speak to people because there are really people out there who will be affected by what you have to say. Um, so answering Sam's question, yes, work on your art and get it out there because there are people who care about what you're going to say with your art. There are people who will love you and there are people who will hate you, but they care. So I want to end this discussion with this video that my partner took of a women's percussion group playing in front of the statue. So you get a little bit of the sense of what it's like there out there around the statue right now.